Ooh.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. Hi. Okay, so this is our third meeting of the Lennox Master Plan update. And tonight we are going to focus on 3 areas, but first we'll do a quick round of introductions. I'm just going to share my screen. So we have a couple slides that we'll go through. I hope everybody's doing well. Thank you so much for taking the time to participate. So this is our third meeting of a series of public meetings, and I just want anybody who's on the steering committee, if you want to raise your hands or wave. The way we've set up the master plan update in Lennox, we've had a kind of diverse group of appointed and elected board and committee representatives make up our steering committee. This was appointed by the Board of Selectmen, and it also included representatives of our cultural institutions, and we had 2 high school students participate who have since graduated. I'm Gwen Miller. I'm the land use director and town planner in Lennox, and we've been guided in this effort by the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission, including Tom Matusko, the executive director, and Phil Arnold and Laura Brennan. And I hope you've had a chance to look at the master plan draft that's available on our website. The link is at the bottom of this slide. It's a very long document, but it's easy to find whatever kind of topic area you're really passionate or interested in. So I hope if you haven't looked at it yet, you will. And really, where are we in the process of this plan? So we're about 2 years into our master plan update. The last update was in 1998. And prior to that, the last master plan in Lennox was in 1968. So we're hoping that the next update won't take as long, or there won't be as much of a time gap in between. We'll aim for like 10 years or 5. So we're 2 years in, and in that 2 years, we've really worked with an array of stakeholders and the steering committee to identify kind of existing conditions in Lennox and look at what are our key challenges and opportunities for the future. We've prepared these draft chapters, and the steering committee has reviewed them and put their mark on it. And now we're bringing it out to the public to get your feedback and input on it. We don't want to create the plan in a vacuum. We did take a bit of a break when the pandemic started, so we didn't meet for a while, but now we're back on track. And our goal is to get community input really through March and early April. And then the master plan is usually adopted by the planning board of a community. In our case, we're also hoping the Board of Selectmen will adopt it. And by adopting it, they're just saying they agree with the vision of the plan, they agree with the contents, and they will support the community as it tries to achieve what's in the plan. And our goal is to have that adoption happen in June 2021. So we still have some time. So in our master plan, and this is really guided by state law, which talks about how a town should have a master plan and what should be in a master plan. So we're really looking at demographics, kind of who lives in Lennox today and who do we think we're planning for in the future. Land use, economic development, open space and recreation, housing, historical and cultural resources, services and facilities, transportation and circulation, and implementation. And we've broken each chapter down kind of an overview, a vision statement, priority topics, priority goals, context and background. So why did we pick these things out? And then a much longer list of the goals, objectives, and actions. So the state law kind of guides what each chapter should have in it, and we'll go through that in a little more detail in a minute. So that's what's in our master plan. It's pretty standard. And so next steps, so what will happen after tonight's meeting? We have a few more meetings scheduled, and we'll take all of your feedback and comments. We'll take those back to the steering committee, who will kind of look at them, talk about them, and decide how they want to incorporate it into the plan going forward. And then we'll post a revised draft up on the town website. We'll have it up for at least 2 weeks, and we'll be seeking more public comment. So that will be another chance for you to take a look and make sure that you agree with the plan content. And then sometime in May, we'll have a final presentation before we seek the adoption of the plan. And the last kind of step of the planning process, and this is what one of our March meetings will really get into, is implementation. So in Lennox, plans don't sit on the shelf. They actually get implemented. And we have a lot of plans that over the last decade and more, many of their goals and actions have been implemented. And so we'll look carefully to make sure that's the same thing with this master plan. We'll make sure that we have clear priorities for all of the goals, objectives, and actions. We'll have a clear timeline. Are they short-term, midterm, or long-term actions the town will take? Are they municipal actions that need to happen? Is it a policy we need to change or adopt? Is it a capital expenditure or plan we need to adopt and implement? Or is further study or planning needed, such as a feasibility analysis or some kind of cost-benefit comparison? And then, of course, the town can't do everything. We're good at a lot of things, but some people are better at some things. So we'll seek out collaborations and partnerships where it's most suitable. So tonight we're going to take a look at 3 topics. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to pick what topic you want to really talk about and think about tonight. So the first topic is land use. And the vision for land use, as you can see here, is that land use in Lennox will be sustainable, contributing to the attractiveness of the community as a place to visit for people of all backgrounds through balanced protection and enhancement of existing assets and the place-based sensitive development of suitable areas. And our priority topics for land use. So Lennox has a real abundance of rich natural resources, but we also want to welcome some growth. So it's saying we're going to keep protecting our natural resources, and the development that does happen, we want it to be sensitive to these resources and, if possible, away from the natural resources. And we'll continue to leverage historical and cultural resources to meet current and future need. So the town already does this with its different policies and kind of zoning, and we'll keep saying, yes, we want to protect our historic buildings and landscapes, but we also want to allow creative new uses to happen within them. And designed to welcome, is our built environment supportive of new businesses, new types of commercial activity, and is it supportive of welcoming residents of all backgrounds and ages into the future? And priority land use goals, there's 4 out of 6, protecting and enhancing the community's rich abundance of natural, historic, and cultural resources, protecting the small town way of life while enhancing equity within the community, and ensuring resilience to climate change and other physical changes like rest of river to Lennox landscapes and neighborhoods, and being a community of welcome to new residents of all backgrounds. The second topic you can participate in tonight is economic development. So the vision here is that Lennox will strengthen its support of tourism and hospitality and seek appropriate opportunities to diversify its economy. So it's really welcoming, it's really recognizing that tourism in Lennox is a big part of the local economy. But also that there are pros to this and there are certain challenges as well. But the main thrust of this priority topic is the town wants to keep promoting tourism, but also extend the reach of tourism, not just into peak season, but into the shoulder and off season as well. And in terms of economic diversification, it's recognizing that, yes, the tourism basket is great for the town, but there are opportunities to expand the type of business, the types of jobs, and the types of commercial activity that take place in Lennox that can really increase equity and increase resilience to regional, state, or national, even international events that are beyond our control. Like if you think about the Great Recession or the pandemic, that can really impact a booming economic sector like tourism. And then the other priority topic, the steering committee and the core assessment team really felt that in order for Lennox to maintain and build its healthy local economy, it really needs to attract and retain new residents to keep people working in the community so employers can find talented workers and keep them, but also to keep municipal services sustainable. And that a specific service that was highlighted was things like public safety. Are there people to man the police department and the fire department and the schools? And are there children to keep attending the local schools? So I kind of already went through the priority goals, but it's really to support and revive the tourism industry. The revive really was in response to the pandemic. Continue to market and kind of market more broadly the high quality of life in the community to attract young professionals and families wanting to leave urban areas, and again, diversifying the local economy. The third topic is open space and recreation. So the town of Lennox will continue to be a proactive steward of its natural landscape and resources, with additional focus on climate change adaptation and further promote the use of its open space and recreational amenities, especially during the winter months. So the priority topics here are really making sure that all of our open space and recreation opportunities are accessible to the public and there's broad awareness, not just for residents, but for visitors and vice versa, and that we're continuing to protect natural resources. And so it's going to be a year-round promotion because there's stuff to do in Lennox outside throughout the year, not just in the summer months, and really keep broadening our network of open space and recreation advocates through continued education and collaborative partnerships, connecting neighborhoods, open space, and recreational areas, protect and augment water resources, and protecting native plant and wildlife habitats from invasive species, and really being proactive in our management of public lands. So what we're really hoping to get from you all tonight is, are we missing anything in this plan, in the chapters? Are all of the important things there? What are your priorities? And in each chapter, the steering committee identified some key questions that we want help answering before we put it on paper. And so we'll go through that in each breakout room. So you should have the option of joining a breakout room, and you'll get to pick between land use, open space and rec, or economic development. but let me just see what time it is. We have a couple minutes if anyone has questions that we can answer. I can answer.
Gwen, this is Pam.
Hello, Pam.
Hi, sorry guys, my camera is broken on my computer. Gwen, where do you want the steering committee members to go in these breakouts? Is there a recommendation?
There is no recommendation. It's whatever you feel most comfortable, I think, talking about, or if you want to weigh in on anything.
Okay.
If there's a specific topic closest to your heart, certainly.
Can you instruct us as to how to get to the breakout groups?
Yes. So on the bottom of your Zoom control panel, if you go to the more, there's the little dots and it says more. If you click on that, you'll get a list of things you can do. And the second option is join a breakout room.
And maybe if you could stop sharing, Gwen, briefly.
Oh, yeah.
Might help people see more of their controls.
Is that what's called chat?
Nope, it's alongside chat. You should see chat, breakout rooms, reactions.
Yeah, I don't, but
I don't have that either.
It's next on mine. It's next to the record button.
Oh, that's
between record and reactions. It's like 4 little squares.
I don't have it.
It says, it says, please record permission from the meeting host.
You don't want to record though.
I know.
Okay, so one more thing is after we go to our little breakout rooms, we're all going to come back as a big group and report back about what you learned, what questions you answered. Yeah, and this is being recorded and it will be posted on CTSB on their website. So if you want to relive it or if you want to share it with anybody, you'll be able to do so.
Gwen, in each one of the breakout sessions, is somebody facilitating?
Yes, so I will be facilitating land use, Laura is facilitating economic development, and Phil will be facilitating open space and recreation.
Okay, good.
So Gwen, if we don't see these more, I still don't see these more buttons.
No.
Okay, thanks everybody for being patient. I'd love to hear from every group now, kind of what was the gist of your conversations? Has anyone covered that already or?
No, we were waiting for land use to come back so we can all talk together.
So do you want, since land use was late, should we go first?
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
Okay. So does anyone from land use want to report back to the group? Other than me. Okay. So we had oh, Mary Beth, I'm going to unmute you. Oops.
I'll give it a shot.
Thank you.
So we were looking basically at where we thought it would be good to have new development, redevelopment, commercially, residentially, and where there would be some reuse of historical and cultural properties and things of that nature. So we broke things down a little bit, looked neighborhood by neighborhood, primarily at the 4 different areas. The Gateway District, which is Route 7 and 20 across from Aspinwell. New Lenox Commercial District, which is just before you hit the Pittsfield line. The Lennoxdale neighborhood with there's a purple area that's industrial development right along the river, and then the town center, the village center. So we talked a little bit about wanting to see some connectivity between Hallowell Farm in the Lennoxdale area, between Hallowell Farm and the river and the industrial area that could potentially be a river walk, up to Post Farm, and then trying to have some kind of connectivity with a bike path or, you know, walking path that would connect those three areas. And then, you know, you could use East Street to kind of come back around. We talked about developing a river walk along the area that's currently light industrial or abandoned industrial down in Lennoxdale. Talked a little bit about infill housing in the Lennox center, in the village center, maybe reusing some buildings, maybe reusing homes that were intended to be single use, single occupancy properties, and applying for special permits to, you know, make some of those homes 2-family, 3-family, 4-family homes. So doing infill that way for multifamily. And then also looking at the Gateway District, which is right across from the Aspenwell area, as that's a large commercial and multi-use area, and trying to do some infill housing there that's mixed use, mixed income, workforce housing, because of course that's along a public transit corridor and has access to water and sewer. So that might be some of the things that could be prioritized. Feel free to jump in if I missed stuff for my group.
That was great. Thank you, Mary Beth. I think that was an interesting question too that came up in the land use group. In our future land use map that's in the plan now, we definitely have targeted some of Lennoxdale for commercial reuse and commercial development, but the group really kind of flipped that on its head and said maybe that area closest to the river should be public space for recreation and kind of public gathering, and really focus residential and commercial development in Lennoxdale, kind of in the village center there. So I think that's something for the broader group to weigh in on as well.
Can I ask a question just because I'm not aware of it? The bike path, who is the owner of developing the bike path through Lennox? And is that underway? Is there funding for it? What's the status?
So I would say the town is the owner of that initiative. The goal is to connect to a regional bike path. Lee is fairly far along with a segment design that would get them to the Lennox line. So we would pick up there in Lennoxdale. And then the funding we would think about pursuing. There are Mass Trails Grant, and then there are federal programs we could seek funding from too. And something that's mentioned in the chapter, the land use section too, is how can the town kind of leverage resources and activity from the rest of river remediation to accomplish some of our open space and recreation goals, such as the shared use path along the river.
So is the bike path along Crystal Street and then it cuts across
so
the bridge?
bike path, there's like, we've identified there's three potential routes kind of identified in our feasibility study. And basically what would happen is you would start on Golden Hill Road and you'd start with like a kind of a side path there. And then when you get to Crystal Street, it would be really difficult to actually do an off-road shared use path unless we changed the sidewalk into kind of a pilot shared use sidewalk. So we'd like widen the sidewalk there. But what we're thinking now is we'd create, it's like an experimental advisory shoulder that we'd have. So it would be a specifically marked lane for cyclists and walkers along Crystal Street. And then once you get off Crystal onto Willow Creek Road, that's when we'd start either pursuing, there's like the former trolley line, where we would try to work with some of the private landowners to get easements on their land and do a shared use path that way. But either way, we'd end up at New Lennox Road, and from there probably follow, there's the transmission line, kind of through the Jidge, the wildlife management area. And then I think we'd try to work with EPRI because they're a big landowner up there. And then we'd get to the Pittsfield line that way. And we do have a public document, this feasibility study we conducted with Alta Planning and Design. We just haven't had a chance to really like unveil it yet.
That's great, though. That's a good summary of kind of what you're looking at.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. And we did apply for Mass Trails money last year for design funding, but we were not successful in that. And we are trying to find a way too. We have sidewalk now from Route 7 down to Walker Street, like all the way down to the Dale. And what we're looking at now is how we can get either a sidewalk or a shared, some kind of walking path parallel to Housatonic Street too, to have a full loop there.
Gwen, if I just want to add something to that, since you got into the bike thing a bit, by putting next to the river, that Riverwalk bike path idea, which also takes you to the bridge at Woods Pond and brings you over to Reservoir Road, that you also, you know, have that whole access on Reservoir Road all the way.
I think, Patty, I think you mean Roaring Brook Road.
Right, Roaring Brook.
Yeah, and that's a suggestion in the chapter as well, is to think about, can we make Roaring Brook Road a designated shared use road? People already use it for non-vehicular recreation. We don't it's a dirt road and it's not the greatest maintained road in the community. So could we kind of formally promote it as a bike and walking path into the future?
That'd be great.
Right. My point being that if we connect all of these pieces, then this gives us access to both sides of the river and the entire of October Mountain.
I think that's fantastic. That would be fantastic.
Yeah. Could I ask a question? I was trying to follow along here, but I wasn't sure. When you mentioned flipping kind of early on about switching over to open space and recreational use along the river as opposed to a housing use, was that what you were saying?
I thought it was commercial.
Yeah, so just for the benefit of everybody, we'll take a look at the future land use map that was developed. And so in Lennox, we have one industrial zone, and that's in Lennoxdale. And the purple swath here for future land use, it's really identified as a location where you could support and promote large employment centers. And there already is some large employment or active employment happening in this zone. There are active businesses in Lennoxdale. And so one thought has always been, we should keep promoting that kind of activity and use in the area where it's traditionally happened, where the zoning is fairly flexible, where you're on town water and sewer, and you're on an active rail line. But you know, in the 21st century, we don't really expect or necessarily want like a new paper mill down here. So could you help attract and support businesses that support the creative economy or artists or kind of custom manufacturing, science and tech? But what the land use group kind of came up with was saying we don't necessarily want to see this corridor further built up or developed. If we really want to open access to the river and connect people to the river in the long-term future, maybe this should be open space and recreation opportunity. And you can focus both commercial and residential redevelopment or new development further south, where you already have kind of a mixed use thing going on here in Lennoxdale.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That was very well said, Gwen.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we also felt the whole orange area. So that could all be.
Yeah, because there's potential opportunity for infill development in the orange area.
Yeah.
So I think if there's anything else from the land use group, we can pass it on to economic development or open space and recreation.
You know, Gwen, I'll just jump in, and this is Pam. I'm sorry again, everybody. My camera on my computer doesn't work. I think what I heard in the land use group from Mary Beth as well is that in the red area, up along Route 20, and this is speaking as a planning board member, that taking a look at our zoning to make mixed use involving multifamily housing more accessible. And especially since it's, there's a lot of land up there and it's on public transit. So not, you know, so being more open toward multifamily in that area as well. Did I hear that right, Mary Beth? Whoops.
Yes.
That was accurate.
You nailed it, yes.
So basically you're talking about kind of highway multi-use, which sounds to me a little bit.
Well, it would be mixed use. It would be, you know, there could be some workforce housing, there could be some townhomes, there could be some, you know, rental apartments. It could be some ownership, some rental. There's a lot of land in that gateway district.
Okay.
I'm having a hard time visuizing what
Yeah,
that,
I mean,
what that would be like in real time, because if I was moving into an area and I had a little bit of choice, I wouldn't want to be so close to all the commerce with my housing.
I think if you kind of visualize what's already happening across the street there, with the condominium units, right, adjacent to Kennedy Park, and you have doctor's offices and small scale retail and dining options, it would be similar to that. And that's really laid out. I think too, we have a gateway development plan. I forget what year the town did it, but it's why the town adopted its gateway overlay district. And so that mixed use vision, it's not a far cry from what Mary Beth is describing and what you already have happening across the street too.
But primarily you're talking about the brushwood side as opposed to the whatever it's called now, the common side, the aspen well, the
Lennox woods.
And then kind of developing the same sort of mix on the east side of that road that you see on the other side.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because both sides of that were part of the gateway plan, as I recall.
Yeah, and the gateway overlay spans both sides.
Also, I mean, nationally, with the growth of online retail, one of the quickest growing areas in the development world is in retail mixed development, because you know they don't have enough stores to support it. That, you know, think of the mall in Lanesboro. I mean, it's empty right now, so there's a huge pressure on property owners, commercial property owners, to have other development to offset the pressure on retail. So I could see this working.
One comment that I would also have is that it would be good to take, to really take a look at what's happened to the Berkshires during the pandemic here and the vast amounts of people who have come here and where they are going. So even though they're not so much using the restaurants at the moment because they're more closed or they can't, but they're coming here in numbers that we've never seen before for the open space. And what's happening is all the sports shops and all the, you go into the Arcadian shop I did today and it's practically empty because they're selling everything. Berkshire Outfitters has had their best year ever, Berkshire Bike and Board. People are wanting very much to be in the open space and outside. And I don't think that's going to stop, but I think that's something that we have to keep in mind, not for the commercial zone where Mary Beth was talking about, but just going back in some of, these other areas along the river and using our natural resources to attract people here who will move here, who will second home here, who will go to our restaurants and our shops.
I think that's an excellent pivot to either open space and rec and certainly economic development, if we want to hear from those groups as well.
Economic development could go next. Does anybody who participated in that want to share some of the things we talked about? Rob, do you want to mention the things that you felt needed more spotlighting in the chapter?
Sure.
Okay.
I guess the first thing is when we were talking about diversifying the economy, we had a lot of discussion about the role that new residents and people who work remotely play. And my feeling is that there's a strong resistance, and the previous group has now reinforced it further, that it's very hard to add new bricks and mortar in the manufacturing in Lennox. First of all, the costs are high. Residents don't want it. But every time we bring somebody who works remotely into Lennox, we are in effect diversifying our economy. They may work for, let's say, Google or, in the tech world or wherever they're working. They don't need to be at that location. We actually have diversified our economy, and that's money coming into Lennox that a large portion of that will be spent locally. And I feel it's sort of a sweet spot that we haven't spent money on this area. It happens by accident right now. It happens through the tourism world. So that's one thing. We did have a discussion about when people come to Lennox, how do we engage them? I used the example that I had living overseas, that everywhere we went had a newcomers club. And, you moved into the community and you could join this newcomers club and you'd meet people that were also looking for friends, looking to get involved. And, moving around the United States, you don't really have that. You really got to go just because it's just not part of our culture so much, other than people may do it through the school or go out and volunteer. I think we need to help people that move here quickly get connected, and so we retain them. And Laura brought up the point, well, what about retaining and converting second homers that might be on the fence about moving here full time? There was another area that we talked about, which is we focus a lot on the meals and lodging tax that tourism brings in to Lennox. And what really differentiates Lennox from almost every other town in Berkshire County is we get the lion's share of this revenue, because Lennox has over 40% of the lodging in in the Berkshires is in Lennox. But it's more than that. And the community, and I think the community needs to understand that 20% of the property tax in the community is commercial property tax. And a large portion of that is driven from tourism. So, the whole effort to have tourism get back on its feet after the pandemic is important. And we need to protect and grow that tourism in a smart way. I don't know if I left anything else out. Anybody else in the group?
No, I think you
You
did a
covered
great job
everything
on
I
that.
had, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note that some of that tourism, I think it'd be helpful to think about ways we could target some of that tourism so that we diversify the population, both locally and of the folks coming in, to attract a more diverse demographic, to really figure out ways that we can make this area more attractive to people of color. I think about Massachusetts. I think about other places in Massachusetts that are tourist destinations. And I think about places like Martha's Vineyard that has, a service economy. I think we should, even though we have a lot more land, we're not an island population, but there's a real disparity between those who come to enjoy the area and those who are serving, an economic disparity, and those who are serving that population of those who are coming to enjoy the area. And I think about a place like Oak Bluffs on Martha's Vineyard that has a predominantly BIPOC population. And I just think we need to just keep this front and center in our minds about what are we doing about diversifying the population so that we're open and accessible to all. It's important.
Very good point. And I think that there are ways for us to work that into the ultimate action items that we have in that goal area. So thank you.
One other point that we did discuss, which is we want more families to come to Lennox, but I can say emphatically, we spend zero money marketing to these people to come to Lennox. And we are competing with not only other communities in the Berkshires, but everywhere wants these people to move to their communities. So if we're really interested in bringing in, and it can be, as Alan said, whoever we want to be here, we need to allocate money to market against that group to get them to come and build Lennox's brand that we are welcoming those people.
We also need connectivity in terms of Wi-Fi and telephone service, because a lot of these people are totally dependent on these things, not only for the businesses you mentioned, but also for a school. So if we don't have good services, we can't really attract these people.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, we've been in, it's very interesting that you mentioned that, because General Dynamics did a study that most of their young engineers would love to move to Lennox, but number one, they can't find any available housing that they can afford. Number two, they really want the unbreakable Wi-Fi and being able to upload information at over 100 megabytes per second. I did get a Spectrum thing in the mail that says now we have 200 megabyte download speeds. And I checked it, I did a test on my phone, and it's pretty fast now, at least where I live. But you're right, we have to make sure that it's seamless, but we also need more housing opportunities for these people, because people want to move to Lennox, but there's not the available dwelling units. So food for thought for the next one.
Well, from many of the areas that these young people are coming from, actually, there is housing here that is affordable, but it's not in Lennox. And I think that's something that Lennox does need to work on.
I think that pretty much wraps up the key points from our conversation in economic development. So if the group that Phil was working with wants to go next.
Yeah, I can chime in about open space. First, I mean, I think it's really interesting just to see the overlap of all these chapters. You know, we were only talking about 3 of the total chapters today, and somehow, you know, housing has gotten brought up and transportation and everything else. And it just shows how interrelated all these subjects are. And on that same note, I like Mary Beth's initial comments about the connectivity, because that's what we ended up talking about in open space, actually. So on one hand, Lennox has a host of all these outdoor open space and recreational amenities. And on the other, there's an aging population. So the group found, this was actually pointed out by Kim Graham, that there isn't enough emphasis on the accessibility for seniors to these amenities. So some of these people may actually live within very close proximity to some of these areas, and either due to a physical limitation or a transportation limitation, it may not be accessible to them. So the chapter talks a lot about improving resources, protecting resources, but there seemed to, the part that we missed was the emphasis on making it more accessible for seniors. The real takeaway was making it accessible for everyone, not just you know, creating a path that might be conducive to younger people or to tourists, but to really have the scope on everyone, current residents, and many of those current residents are seniors. But if anybody else from my group wants to chime in, feel free. I may have missed something. I was trying to take notes at the same time.
So we talked a little bit, not only about making, not only about the accessibility piece and taking care of our residents. And as everybody here knows, you know, we have a huge population of elderly and a senior population. So whatever we do, we want to keep those people in mind as far as accessibility goes. And to be more specific, I loved that, you know, still in this plan, we were talking about the pocket parks with, you know, in the underserved neighborhoods for the kids. And that is a very specific action item in this plan. I'd love to see perhaps maybe an action item that perhaps says that we put in a walking track. And that is something that could work for the seniors as well as all populations. It's level ground. You know, we could provide transportation there. It could be near public transportation. You know, the Council on Aging could bring them in their vans, you know, give them a place to be able to walk. A walking track would be a really good thing. A senior fitness trail with different stations. Dalton's did a really nice job with the senior fitness trail. That's something that could be used, you know, not only by our residents, but by the people that are coming in. I mean, a lot of our second homeowners and are elderly, and not all are agile enough to climb a mountain or go up to Kennedy Park, and all these things are wonderful resources. But I think we need to look at how we can provide for the elderly population that might not be quite as agile.
I would like to add something on that score. I'm concerned that Lilac Park is getting small for the town, and that there are more and more things being added to Lilac Park. And I think that we need to really take a serious look at what other in the center of town space there is available for people to enjoy a concert outdoors, or if that's part of our attraction and our plan for the long run is to continue the cultural events. I think we need to really, in this whole plan, consider that, adding additional space somewhere for that.
Thank you, Sarah, for bringing that up. I think that is in the land use chapter, and the focus is thinking about how we were able to reuse new space in the village center, particularly this summer. Working with some of the private landowners, and how permanent does the town want to make some of those changes, and expanding so activities aren't just happening in Lilac Park, but in Triangle Park, in Roach Reading Park, and then in some of those kind of pocket parks that were created over the summer on Church Street, and then the one over on Franklin Street as well.
So Gwen, you're talking about the parking lots that were kind of converted into being more open, more available to all of the public, rather than just the specific things. Okay, interesting.
Gwen, I have two questions on this. One was, again, the path that was supposed to go between Church Street and Main Street from Walker all the way to Franklin. That was originally in some consultants' recommendations, was supposed to create little sitting areas and all, a way for people, for us to have more interaction in this kind of in those dead spaces. Is that something that could happen, and was that considered in this?
Yes. Yep. And actually, I think there is a group of people who are hoping to convene a working group or kind of a steering group to come up with a more design, and working with the property owners to implement that, while also figuring out more parking opportunity and making some of the temporary summer changes into more permanent functional changes over the long run.
Okay.
And they would try to work with like a landscape architect and an engineer to really get down to far enough along in design that we could start pursuing kind of construction.
The other question I had is Orbed Park, which seems to me very underutilized, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
What's the question about Orbed Park?
Well, Sarah brought up the point that we need to expand the space that we're doing things. And Orbed, I mean, I know there's the playground there and so forth, but every time I've ever gone by there, I've never seen anything going on there. So
it was great for skating one year.
Yeah, so I'll say too, Kate, we would like to get a larger skating rink somewhere in the downtown area or close to it. And for Orbed Park, I think it is very busy in the summer, and I think they do like T-ball there. One thing, I think a lot of people don't know it's there, kind of visitors. And one thing we tried to do when we did our pilot, we had those little signs that told you how far it was, like here, you're 5 minutes away from a playground if you walk, and you could get directions from the QR code. So I think part of that is helping people know that it's there and how to get there. And also what is there. Because it's a really nice little park, really close to downtown. And also something to think about too, the town now owns some new open space close to Orbed Park. I'll just share a quick map with you. So at town meeting a few years ago, we actually accepted a donation of land kind of between Hubbard Street and Housatonic Street. Call it the Palladino property because that's who donated it. But it's between Hubbard, and you can access it from War Memorial Field. So one thing we're thinking about is how to get, like, there's a nice walking path that already exists there. It's very level.
And I think you must mean Housatonic.
Are you talking War Memorial or Orbed?
Yeah, if you're talking Orbed and War
New
Memorial.
piece of land that the town only recently took ownership of.
But I think you mean Housatonic, not Hubbard.
I mean Hubbard Street.
Yeah, it is between Hubbard.
Frontage for the property was on Hubbard Street, and if you go to the end of Tucker Street, there's a little informal access to it. And then it stretches all the way down to Housatonic Street, where you can access it from War Memorial.
Okay,
Really
now
nice.
I know exactly where you mean.
That's a really nice area. It's near me. And there's some nice wetlands in there. And
Yeah.
I think that you could put your walking track that you were talking about, that would be around that field.
Yeah.
That also would be a fabulous place for a dog park.
Yeah, we do have, the donation is subject, it's really restricted to kind of passive recreation. So walking, kind of, I would love to have Mass Audubon lead some like in-town bird walks there. So that offers some new opportunity though, to think of.
So I know this is getting very granular, but who's doing what to the land adjacent to War Memorial Park? It's being all cleared and flattened out, and it's a lovely parcel.
I think they're
That's privately owned, I think, by one of the Herricks.
Someone looks like they're getting ready to do something with that parcel. It might be worth.
Yeah, but
keeping an eye
that
on.
land is privately owned, I believe.
I know.
Yeah, it looks like a housing lot.
Yeah.
Or a couple of housing lots.
Yeah.
A nice little piece of property, and if you wanted to be contiguous with an existing park.
Yeah, no, but that is a very nice opportunity that I hadn't realized, because I walk past that access point all the time, Gwen, and yeah, that's a nice
It's a
path.
really nice spot for like kind of easy in-town walking. So
Yeah.
Rob, can I just say something? I have to agree with Rob as far as Orbed Park goes. Orbed Park is it's got great access to in town. It's utilized for T-ball and coaches pitch 5, sometimes 6 Saturdays, starting in May, and then it ends on the last Saturday when school gets out. So for the summer, the rest of the time, that area just kind of sits, other than the playground area, the swings, the tiny little playground structure. In the past, we have allowed, I know that the community center has allowed and have worked with like Cranwell, Blantyre. They had wedding parties come in, and the guys wanted to just have a quick softball game, and so they filled out a facility use form, and it's been used for family reunions, it's been used for softball games, for bridal parties, and there is other uses that it could be used for other than just that 5-6 weeks. It's a baseball field, but it's very family friendly. And I have to tell you, Cranwell used it a lot and actually promoted, when it was Cranwell, promoted it for their wedding parties. And there was quite a bit of games that would go on like on the weekends. So it could be used for something other than the 5 Saturday mornings, 2.5 hours a morning, for T-ball and coaches pitch.
Let me ask you a question on that though, Kim. When they did come in and fill out a facilities thing, then that actually blocked the public use, right? Because they paid some sort of fee to use it?
Yes. Yep.
So in other words,
for the baseball field.
Yeah. Okay.
For the baseball field.
Yeah.
they're one-off events.
When could that be a spot for a really nice, high investment ice skating rink, temporary ice skating rink in the winter?
It could be, yes. I think right now we're actually looking at, our hope is, so since we're installing pickleball, AKA multi-use courts behind the community center, our hope is that an ice skating rink could actually go. We can co-locate them because the ground will be graded more and very flat and good for a refrigerated ice skating rink.
Sounds great.
Right now, where we put it behind the community center, it takes away play space for the kids and it just gets really messy.
Yeah.
And because it's not refrigerated, it's all dependent on the weather. But we really want one that could be used no matter the temperature, and that's in town.
That sounds great.
Let's hope it's actually big enough for adult skating too.
Yeah, so Chris wants, I think he wanted the biggest one that could fit up to 250 people.
Yay. Think
That's
big,
about
think
my size.
big.
I don't know if we can go that big just based on dimensions, but we're gonna try to go pretty big.
Is that going to be lighted?
I'm not sure how we'll handle lighting and night.
You can just skate with your headlamp on.
Well, no, we need lighting.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think if we want people to really use it,
Yeah, lighting.
I think we would need to think about lighting. So that's one of the details we'll have to work out.
One other thing I wanted to bring up is the park down in
The neighbors.
Lennoxdale. I mean, we talk a lot about trying to give Lennoxdale a boost, and I think the bike path coming through will be fantastic. But I also, that park down there where the ball field is behind Moonshines is just so, I know there's a baseball league that plays there in the spring, but again, that's, you know, it seems so underused. And if it could be connected into Crystal Street easily as well. And, you know, also it's got good connection from Walker. I mean, I just see it as an underutilized asset for Lennoxdale.
Well, if we had more kids in town, all of these would be used more.
I know, but we don't, and we got to attract them somehow. I don't know how, but it just seems an underutilized asset.
So one thing we are looking for, and you can agree or I'll disagree, is we've been thinking we want to create a Lennoxdale community garden like we put into Lilac Park. And one thought was if there's extra room at Tilliston.
Is that park called Tilliston?
Yeah.
Bob Sullivan Memorial Park.
What is it, Kim?
The Bob Sullivan Memorial Park.
Oh, okay.
It's located
Tillotson
yeah,
Field or something, or?
Tillotson. Yeah.
No, okay.
Anything else for open space and rec?
Well, it sounds like you've been really busy.
Okay, so it's 9 o'clock. We've all been together for 2 hours. I think unless anybody has anything else to add or any questions, we'll conclude this evening's meeting.
Thank
So
you.
thank you all for coming. I hope you'll participate in our upcoming meetings. I know the next one
March 1st.
is March 1st and then March 15th. And on March 1st, we'll talk about housing, transportation, municipal services and facilities. I think
And historical and cultural resources.
yeah, so that will be a big one. And then March 15th is our implementation meeting. So thank you so much. And I hope everyone stays well and stays warm and take care.
Thanks for your hard work,